Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and today I'm coming with you for the Day 10 news. And tonight we're going to be covering all the events that have happened over the past 24 hours on Day 10. Right now, the sun is rising on Day 11, but at the moment we're still collecting information on Day 10. So we'll start off in the Kyiv area, and as usual, we will move our way around the entire front until we get to the southern area near Mykolaiv. Also, I would like to point out once again, for anyone that was wondering, the nuclear reactor is under control. Nothing has happened there. There was a small development over day 8 and 9, but now that situation has been resolved, fortunately. So, before I move into the actual discussion and reports of tonight's stream, I'm going to talk about something that I've been saying every single stream, but I cannot stress the importance of enough, and that is logistics. And today I finally went over the numbers and I uploaded it to my Discord, link in the description below if you'd like to go see it for yourself. But I also made a map, and I haven't uploaded that yet. But I'm going to show my map and kind of explain it. It's much more simpler than the one I use here on the normal daily report. It's just this one string. And what this is right here is that this is the distance of travel that a normal Russian convoy is probably having to take to resupply a single battalion tactical group near the area of Kyiv. And I didn't do it for every front. I'm sure that's different in some places, and the trips are shorter. And the logistical systems for the Russians are a little bit better. But I went with the most heavily contested area at the moment, which is Kyiv, which, according to information, has the most units in it at the time. So, without further ado, I'm going to explain Russian logistics to a point. We're going to talk about why I think and why my numbers back up the reason why I keep on saying that logistics is all that matters, and Russia is losing the logistics side of this war. So we're going to start off at this railroad yard in this town. And you may be wondering, why a railroad yard? You know, isn't Russia beyond railroads? No, they're not, actually. It's really surprising to me that they're the only country in the world that actually has units. Their entire purpose is to conduct railroad operations. They're the only army in the world with that still integrated into it at this point. They rely heavily on railheads. And railheads are like rail yards where you can unload cargo and stuff. That's what a railhead is. Anyways, all Russian supplies have to travel by railroad for the most part until they get close enough to the front lines that trucks can pick them up and then take them the rest of the way. And so, that being said, this is the closest and the largest rail yard near Kyiv that the Russians could use. And so I'm assuming that this rail yard is probably where the Russians are basing a lot of their logistical operations. So moving on from that, let's go over again the size of a BTG and the supplies you'll probably need. So y'all have heard me say, and those of y'all who are new to the stream, welcome. And I'm probably going over this that's new for y'all, and that's why I'm kind of going over it in the same level of detail as the other nights. But a BTG is the basic command structure of the Russian army. It stands for Battalion Tactical Group, and each Battalion Tactical Group consists of around 800 men. I believe 200 to 300 of those are officers. And you may be thinking that's an incredibly high number. Like, why do they have so many officers? That's because in the Russian army, it's actually top-sided, and they have a lot of officers, but they don't really have a lot of NCOs. And it's really weird because you have lieutenants doing the job of sergeants in the Russian army. It's just weird, but that's how they operate. But anyways, there's 800 men in a BTG, and then they have 20 tanks. These can be T-72s, T-80s, or T-90s. It doesn't really matter because all of them carry about the same amount of fuel, and so for the purposes of calculating supplies, they're pretty much the same. And then you have 30 APCs, and these could be BMD-4s, BMP-2s, BMP-3s, any APC you can imagine. Just think that 30 of those are in each BTG. And so 800 men, 20 tanks, 30 APCs, and maybe a little bit of additional equipment has to get supplies every single day to function. And so let's go over the math and see how much supplies that really is. So starting off with gas, because everyone's always talking about the Russians have run out of gas, but how much gas does a BTG need daily to run? And so we're going to answer that right here. A BTG needs a lot of gas, actually, and let's go over the specific numbers. A single tank has a 1,200 liter gas tank. So that means that if your average Russian fuel truck can carry 6,000 liters of fuel, one fuel truck can supply 5 tanks with gas. And so, I mean, like, that's pretty decent. One truck covers 5 tanks. That's fairly well. But you have 20 of them, so you can't just do it with one truck. And so you're going to have 5 trucks in the convoy to supply the tanks alone with gas. Then you add in the 30 BMPs, and then that number goes up to an additional 3 fuel trucks. So now you have 7 fuel trucks in total. And so now we're going to move on to the food. And assuming that these Russian soldiers don't have some kind of field kitchen set up somewhere where they're getting hot food, the MREs have to be moved to the troops. And so, doing these numbers earlier when I actually did these, I assumed that one MRE was one meal, but I actually found out that one MRE in the Russian army is actually the whole, set of meals for the day. It's all 3 meals that they require in one package. But regardless, a single MRE weighs 4 pounds. And so if you were to give 3 of them to each soldier to eat a day, which the numbers were a little bit off, but it didn't really matter, that means you'd have to transport 9,600 pounds of food. And when you convert that to tons, it only takes up half of a truck to even bring out 3 times the amount of MREs they need. So MREs don't get their own truck in this calculation. So the MREs are put in some other trucks that have extra room in them. Anyways, ammunition has to be included, and I got these numbers, and I know this doesn't sound good because Wikipedia is always not the best place to go, but I can't get official numbers anymore off of Russian websites because they've been removed from the search engine here in the US. So I had to go to the Gulf War, and I went to some published Marine Corps logistics, and considering that it was talking about a division level unit, which is 16,000 men in the Marine Corps, and a BTG is 800 men, I was concluding that based off the manpower alone, they would need 20 times less ammo than a, Marine Corps division. And so going off of that, I found out that they would need 200 to 225 tons of ammunition on a daily basis, according to what the Marines said they needed on a daily basis during the Gulf War. And so the average Russian supply truck can only carry 5.5 tons of cargo. So you see, that's a lot. That's a lot of ammo. And considering that a truck can't actually carry that much ammo on its own, this means that you'll have to have an extra 37 to 41 supply trucks to carry that ammo alone. And I'm not talking about ammo like 5.45 ammo for your AK-74s. I'm talking about all the ammo they would need. The 5.45, the 7.62, what else would there be? The 120 millimeters, the 30 millimeters, all that stuff. It adds up in weight pretty quickly, especially for tanks because shells are actually pretty heavy. So the number would be pretty accurate that it would require about 37 to 41 supply trucks carrying ammo, and that's just alone. So you can go click on the map and click on that link, and you can go down to the Gulf War section and see the actual numbers divided for this calculation, so that way you can know that they're somewhat based in something somewhere. But anyways, then we have to account for the average amount of water that a soldier will drink. And I've been hearing from some people today that water can actually be accessed in Ukraine. But the thing that I'm thinking is that considering that the Russians have cut off water in Sumy, is water even available to them? And so I'm thinking they may be trucking that in, but nonetheless, if they are or not, that only adds an extra vehicle to the convoy. Just one tanker truck that's filled with water. So then we'll throw in another 3 additional trucks. 2 of them will carry miscellaneous equipment because systems break down on tanks. Sometimes you need new rifles because some have been damaged. Just anything and everything that you can think of that may take up a lot of weight or room. We're going to allocate 2 extra trucks to that convoy for that, and then an extra truck to help with the repairs. An extra vehicle to help with the repairs on the tanks. And so now our convoy, before it even leaves, is up to 49 trucks total to carry all the supplies needed for a single BTG. So then they have to pick up the supplies, okay? Now that we know the amount of supplies they need and how many trucks that's going to take, now we have to load it. And loading it could take 1 to several hours, around 1 to 3 hours, 3 being the most and if everything's going poorly, and 1 at the best and if they're being at their highest efficiency loading these vehicles. So now they've got 49 trucks in the convoy, and they spend about an hour to 3 hours loading up cargo. And so now they have to set off on the road to the areas around Kyiv. And so what do? Well, they go 25 miles an hour with 100-meter spacing in between them. I pulled that up. Couldn't get any numbers on the Russian military, but I got numbers for the Marine Corps, and it said that the average speed in a convoy like that was 40 miles per hour. Well, no, I'm sorry, not 40 miles per hour. It was 40 kilometers per hour, which translates to somewhere around 25 miles per hour. And so this convoy is crawling at a snail's pace with this kind of spacing. And then you got to, and we'll get into scaling this up later on, but you got to consider that there's 150 BTGs all around the country at this point, most likely, that are requiring supplies. And so you have all these 49 vehicle long convoys moving to each BTG, and they're all occupying almost the same major roadways. And so, the traffic jams are going to get immense. Anyways, moving on from that, we're going to talk about how long the convoy is so that we can get the idea of how much the traffic jam problem will compound if they keep a regular spacing and they go at a slow speed to keep that close spacing. A Euro truck is about 24 feet long, and according to the U.S. Marines, they keep a spacing of around 100 meters between each vehicle, like I said. And so if you do the math, this convoy, this 149 vehicle convoy, will stretch about 3.2 miles long. And that's with rather close spacing, considering what the Marine Corps says. And they have to travel at around 25 miles an hour to keep this spacing well. And so they're already going slow, and if they run into any traffic jams, they'll be at a dead stop. So, moving on from that, we're going to get to our next point. The one-way trip, after loading up cargo for about an hour to 2 hours, the one-way trip alone is about 5 hours long. This distance in between the railhead and the area around Kyiv is around 202 kilometers long, and that's just going down the major highway alone. So, and I know this really isn't a highway, I've been told that a lot, but, they're showing up yellow, and I believe they're paved, and so I'm calling them major highways because they're, the major roadways marked on the map. But nonetheless, this trip from the railhead up here to the area around Kyiv down here is around 5 hours long. And so it's a very long drive. Usually, the Russian army only wants to operate at the farthest, I believe around 70 to 80 miles from the railhead from what I was reading today. And at the moment, the closest railhead that's close to Kyiv is around like 140 miles away, 150 miles away-ish. And so it's a very long distance away, and they're really stretching their already strained logistical services to their limit and way beyond it. So anyways, it takes 5 hours for them to get around to the area of Kyiv, and now we're going to go over what happens at Kyiv and scaling this on up. So once they arrive, they have to unload, and this could take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours from what I was reading. If they're well trained, it'll take an hour. If they're not, it could take 2 hours. And considering they're conscripts, it could be anywhere in between. They may actually know what they're doing and get it done in an hour, but they don't have a lot of training. They're only there on a 1-year contract, and so they get it done in 2 hours instead, which is a lot of time to waste. And so then they get done unloading, and they have to hit the road, and they have to go back. And so the whole entire trip can take somewhere around 12 to 14 hours for this one convoy to deliver the supplies needed for a single BTG to operate over the course of one day. And so when you look at that, this convoy's time has been taken up completely over the course of that day running supplies to one BTG. So 49 trucks could not do anything else but run to that one BTG. And you're saying, well, there's like 12 to 10 hours left in the day. What else could they do? Well, you got to remember that the crews of these vehicles have to sleep. And on top of that, they're going to have to be pretty much getting ready again within a few hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours, to start taking this trip again and loading up the trucks and all that stuff. So that way they can be there by the time this BTG needs the supplies again. And on top of that, we didn't even talk about the supplies that this convoy will need, like the amount of gas it'll need if anything breaks down on it. We didn't even talk about that, but we're not caring about that. We're just caring about the BTG level. And so finally, we're going to scale this thing up. And so let's say there's 150 BTGs, and we just went over everything that has to happen for one BTG to function. So we have 150 of them now, just like there is most likely in Ukraine. And so all of these have to have almost the same supply needs as this BTG nearly every single day. So if we multiply this by 150, the amount of trucks needed and all that stuff, we get a number that every single day to supply the BTGs alone, and the Russian army isn't made up of nothing but BTGs. There's a whole other units that have to be supplied that are currently in Russia and Ukraine right now fighting that are not BTGs, and they're usually much larger. You would need 7,350 trucks operating every single day to supply all of these 150 BTGs and make sure they had all the equipment where they were actually combat ready. And so this is what was nuts to me, is if you put all of these trucks in a convoy, just a single convoy with 100-meter spacing in between each of them, so that's a close formation convoy from what I was reading today, this convoy would be about 740 kilometers long. That is huge. I mean, like that's literally from one end of Ukraine to the other, I believe. It's like a huge convoy. It's just unbelievably large. And that amount of trucks is needed to operate the army each day. Just each day. And here's the problem. They don't have that many trucks. Russia has 10 logistical support brigades, and in each of these brigades, they only have around 460 logistical trucks. That's not getting into which ones are tankers and which ones are flatbeds. All we're talking about is that's how many vehicles they have in each logistical support brigade is 460 supply trucks, which means at the best, they have 4,600 supply trucks in total that are in running condition. But we know that in the military, some of these have broken down. They're having to be fixed. And so 4,600 is ideal. That's literally every single supply truck running. And they still are at a deficit. They just do not have enough trucks to supply all of these BTGs every day. And then you have to add on top of that, the things I didn't calculate for, like artillery units, the MLRS units that require like 50 trucks to resupply after every volley they fire, like around, I think 6 or 7 of them require like 30 something trucks to resupply. It would take a week or several at this point. Speaking of the truck problem, they have to fix this problem somehow. And so how do they do it? Well, the Russian solution to this would be to extend the railheads further down, so that way they'll be closer to the front lines and try and shorten the distance the trucks are having to travel. But the problem with that is that they can't, because the Ukrainians have destroyed all the railheads, and on top of that, that takes weeks to build railroads. It takes a good while, and they don't have that kind of time, because if they can't fix this logistical issue soon, they're just going to start losing all of the progress they've been making, because either they will be able to get the ammo to the units, but they won't be able to get the fuel, so the vehicles will be stationary, and that makes them useless, or they will have fuel, but they won't have ammo, and if they don't have ammo, they're also useless. So in most places, they can only give them one or the other, or they may be getting none. They may not be getting any supplies for the actual soldiers or supplies for the vehicles, and so that entire BTG is inoperable, and people are going to start going hungry, and people are going to start deserting. And so you can start seeing that based off of the math I've got right here, which is mostly accurate. I mean, it's done off of public numbers, so based off of the public numbers, it's fairly accurate. But based off of that, even if we were to adjust some of that, like if we were able to make the trucks maybe carry an extra ton more, they are still missing thousands of vehicles that they just do not have to transport this cargo. And so that brings us on to something else. And I have to say, before I even saw this today, I hit this dead on the nail. And a lot of YouTubers are starting to hit this dead on the nail as well with the logistical situation. Is that I had a mod, and this was actually a very smart comment. He said that soon the Russians would start acquiring civilian vehicles to try and make up the shortcomings in their logistical units, and that's true. And I'll show you all the video. You gotta make sure it stays muted though. Civilian vehicles. I can't make this stuff up, y'all. I mean, like, the numbers are apparently right, or they wouldn't be trying to acquisition these civilian vehicles to carry cargo. Oh, it's got copyrighted music in it. Gotta make sure it doesn't have the copyrighted music in it. But what you're looking at here is you're looking at trucks that are not going to have the same carrying capacity of your standard Ural truck that the Russians use in most logistical units. And so you're going to have to have a lot more of these. You're going to have several thousand of them. Like 2,000 of them maybe to do the job that 1,000 Urals could do. And so you're going to create a larger traffic problem. The convoys are going to get even longer. They're going to be less efficient. And you're just going to run into all these problems. It's a never-ending slew of problems for them because their logistics is just so screwed up. Like, Russia's logistics isn't made for offensives. It's really not. I mean, like, it's really made more for static warfare that moves really slowly because it relies on these railheads being built while the fighting's going on, and as the front line moves, the railheads are being built at the same speed the front line's moving behind it, so the supply lines that the trucks are having to cover are, you know, an equal distance as they can be, and they only have to make like a round trip of around 4 hours or so, because if these convoys have to travel longer than 4 hours, they're practically becoming ineffective and inefficient, and the railheads are just too far back. And so they're running into a lot of problems with logistics, and that's become truth now because the Russians are having to acquisition civilian vehicles like we just saw in that video, and there's no way you can make that up now that if they had the logistics under control and everything was going according to plan, they wouldn't have to be getting all those civilian vehicles to use. They just wouldn't. And so that being said, that's the logistical situation, and now we're going to move on to the actual reports we got from around the country today. But before I do that, since I talked about a lot about logistics and just made a TED Talk on it, I'll go to the comments real quick and see if we got any questions. Let's see. They are using covers to hide fuel trucks. I saw that. I saw that a few days ago. It means Putin bite off more than he could chew, and no one under him had the balls to say so. Yeah, some people are talking about now that actually the main goal was for Russia to push in the southern area because it was more suitable to Russian tactics, but then this offensive near Kyiv was just tacked on at the very end, and so there's like no planning to this, and that's why the units up there are kind of like disorganized, and they're just kind of throwing things at it now, like the 40-mile long convoy. And by the way, think about that. You got a lot of BTGs operating in that area, and on top of those convoys moving slowly, now you have a 40-mile long convoy that's stopping everything from moving down that road that was on this map right here. This one. There's a 40-mile long convoy that stretches from about here where my cursor is to about up here. Somewhere around there. And it's blocking the road completely in some places, and then the logistic trucks have to try and get off the road and drive through the terrible mud that's happening in the northern area of the country and hope that they don't get bogged down. And then the tires have rotted, and there's a whole bunch of talk about the cheap Chinese tires and all that stuff. And so it's just going really badly for them. Let's see what else we got now. They are already getting civilian vehicles. Yeah, they are. Poor logistics, lose wars. Russia is breathing heavy. They are. Will they remove Putin or kill? I can't really say either way. I mean, like, at this point, I think it could really go either way. I think he'll probably try and flee if he sees that everyone's going to start turning against him. But if he doesn't try to flee, they might kill him. They never expected to have to use any of their weaponry. Putin believed his own propaganda and thought... Excuse me, everyone. I'm still really tired. Thought the convoy would just roll into Kyiv unopposed. That's entirely true based off of what happened at Hostomel and all around the country on the first day. I believe they thought that the Ukrainian government would flee and the country would fall within a day. That's what I think they were expecting. Let's see. I'd be willing to bet that Western special forces are actively helping Ukraine both in training and combat. Maybe. I don't really have any information to go either way, so maybe. Hopefully the fact that he's losing gives him an aneurysm. Hopefully. Maybe he'll end up like Stalin. He'll have a stroke or something. More volunteers are coming to Ukraine, guys. Yes, they are. There was about 16,000 in the Foreign Legion, and I think there's even more. And Pavel is still here. Welcome back, Pavel. It's good to see you back. Let's see. Would have no problem with being called to fight. Meanwhile, Ukraine is having success making their logistics worse. That's true. They're making the Russian logistics a lot worse because they're destroying a lot of vehicles. And also the Russians are having a lot of problems with that as well, as they're abandoning a lot of logistical vehicles in just random areas of the map. And if you want to see the videos I'm talking about that show that, they're on this map. Just join the Discord and go to the useful links section, and this map is in there. And you can click on all the links and take a good look at them. Moving on. Putin really miscalculated this, and hopefully it'll be the end of him. I'm glad that everyone's agreeing with me that he had to have miscalculated this, because I didn't do all that math this morning in the middle of studying for the LSAT for nothing. I was really thinking about it. I was like, I really hit on something talking about the fuel trucks. I was like, what if we accounted for all the supplies? And then we did the math off of that and then scaled it up to all the BTGs in Ukraine. And it just shows that it cannot work even on the basic numbers. And you don't have to be some kind of rocket scientist or West Point educated or be an Amazon Prime executive to understand that their logistics aren't working. You know, you can just generally punch in just some normal numbers and not really get too complicated. And you can see that regardless how this works, they're having to have they just don't have the amount of trucks they need to make it a short answer. And I'll answer a few more, and we will finally get on to the Kyiv news. Should we risk World War III to do the right thing by actively fighting Russia? I mean, like, I think we should kind of do that at this point because it appears that Russia is going to threaten us with war either way, because now they're talking about, oh, sanctions are war, blad. These are pretty much war. And, at that point, it's like, oh, so we can't do anything to you? It's like, we might as well just go all the way then, because you're going to call everything war. We might as well just go to war with you and get this over with at this point, because if we can't do anything to try and make you change your mind, whether it be diplomacy, sanctions, or just going to all-out war, and you're just going to do whatever you want regardless of these three options, we really have nothing left. Apparently diplomacy has failed, and so you have to keep on escalating until something succeeds or it all ends. Talk to me like I'm stupid, because I am when this is concerned. What does it all mean, respectfully? Well, I didn't take it disrespectfully, but what it means, to simplify what I was saying, Russia needs a lot of trucks. They need like around 7,400 trucks, and to supply all of the battalion groups in Ukraine. And they don't have those kinds of trucks. They don't have that many. They only have around 4,600 trucks. And so they're missing like 3,000 of them. And without those 3,000 extra trucks, only about 62% of the Russian army, a little more than half, can actually operate. And the rest of them are missing supplies, or they're entirely not getting supplies. So that's, in like the simplest terms, they're missing a lot of trucks, and they can't get supplies to everyone. That's pretty much what all that meant just a minute ago. Let's see. Could it be Russia is making the same mistakes so many other armies have made trying to wage war through Ukraine? I think it's a mistake that the Russians have done continuously throughout history. They did that in Afghanistan. They did that in Finland. They always underestimate how difficult, and also they did it in World War II. Not a lot of people know that, but they underestimate the value of logistics, and they just go with the stuff that like elementary school kid could go with, like, we need more tanks. They never think we need more trucks. In World War II, if you remember, they were losing until around 1942, and then they actually started making progress. And you know what happened in 1942 is that the Lend-Lease happened, and America exported some 200,000 trucks to the Soviet Union. And so they fixed the logistical issues for the most part for the Soviets, because the Soviets, no matter how much they saw that equipment was not getting to the front because they simply didn't have the infrastructure in the military to do that, they just were dead set on, we need to produce more T-34s, and we need to produce more assault tanks. We need to produce everything rather than logistics. Everything rather than that. We need planes. We don't need trucks to refuel them with. We need more tanks, but we don't need trucks to bring them the food and the ammo and the gas that they'll need to run. We don't need none of that. They did that in World War II, and if it wasn't for the United States providing the Lend-Lease, and this isn't like America saves the day thing, because a lot of people these days want to say that Russia won the war. But really they had poor strategy, and that's what led to so many of their people getting killed, is that they had inept commanders, poor strategy, and all that stuff. That's like a hour-long discussion or a 2-hour-long discussion in its own. But they've been doing this since the beginning of time, pretty much, since the Soviet Union had existed. Now it's gone over into the Russian Federation as well. And I'm sure if we saw Belarus get involved, it'd also carry over into them as well. So, that being said, they just don't focus on logistics enough. They've been doing this forever. And so, it's the same problem they've run into with every single war, is that they just never focus enough on the actual monotonous things that are critically important, like logistics. And so with that, I'm going to move on now to start talking about what's been going on around Kyiv. We can see that there have been some Russian units in the area. Also, I'd like to mention that as of now, it's been 4 days since that convoy stalled north of Kyiv, and it still has not moved at all. I'd just like to mention that again. But anyways, we can see some Russian units moving near Kyiv. This was taken by a Russian news outlet. But nonetheless, they are Russian troops and moving around in a snowy field. Also, I'd like to point out that for everyone talking about the best and the greatest, these units appear to be fresh and have just moved in, and they're using BMP-1s, and the original units that invaded Ukraine were using BMP-2s, which are by far considered a lot better than the BMP-1. And so I just want you all to think about that for a minute. And I believe that everything that we're seeing today has got to kill the argument. I mean, I hope it does. It's got to kill the argument that the Russians are just waiting to send in their best, because now it looks like they're actually sending in their green units with the old equipment, like the really old equipment. But anyways, I'll let the video continue. Look at that. Wait a minute. Look at that. That kind of looks cool and all, but they haven't replaced the filters in the engines. Okay, and that tells you the amount of money they're putting into the maintenance of these vehicles. Is that this is a usual problem for reenacting vehicles. I'm a reenactor, by the way, if y'all didn't know. I do that on the side for fun a bit. But reenacting vehicles, you know, like M4 Shermans and stuff, they have this problem a lot because the filters are really old, and the groups that refurbish those tanks don't really put as much money as needed to fully restore them. And so sometimes the filters are old, and these things smoke. And that tells you the amount of effort they're putting into keeping these vehicles in good running order, is that these things are having the same problems that reenacting vehicles have, which are usually from World War II, about 70 years old, and they just got restored like 2 or 3 years ago, or just a year ago, and they're having the same filter problems as those tanks. See, another BMP-1. This time it has an ATGM on it. But nonetheless, that's simply the video. But you don't see that I pointed out a decent bit of glaring issues with the video. Like, it's trying to show the Russians in a good light because it's a Russian propaganda kind of video, you know, trying to show them moving and stuff. But they're BMP-1s, and the tanks look like they're not really well kept because of the filter issues in the engine. Moving on from that, there was a video that came out today of a Russian vehicle being hit on a major highway. It was somewhere in the Kyiv area, but I wasn't actually able to find out exactly where. So this marker is not an accurate reflection of where it is on the map. Also, I'll back it up a bit. Right down there. So, that being said, that's a good thing. I don't know where that was, but it was a really good thing. It's always nice to bust the top off of a BMP or a tank. Moving on from that, we can see that this was claimed. Now, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but this is claimed to be the last VDV soldier alive in Hostomel, and they captured him. So I'm going to show you all the video. It's pretty self-explanatory beyond what I said, so I'll just let y'all watch it.
Где вы высаживались? Как сюда двигались? Сколько пришло? Сколько пришло?
Okay, so I'm going to cut the video short because they just sit there and ask the guy questions, and he tries to answer them, I guess. But one thing I have noticed, and I'm assuming this is how we confirm their VDV, is that they have the black and orange stripes on their jacket sleeves. And so I'm guessing that that's kind of like the identifier of who's a VDV trooper or not. But I don't know. That's just speculation on my part due to the pictures I've seen of all the VDV troops having the similar stuff on their jackets. But anyways, we're going to move on from that. And we're going to move down to the area of Irpin, where I've seen a video today that the Russians are still moving around in Irpin, although the Ukrainians have pushed them out. Maybe this is a breakthrough convoy or a convoy that got cut off. But here's the pictures of it. Actually, that looks like supply vehicles, don't they? With a tanker. And it looks like they're being escorted. That may be a convoy that's coming from the railhead I was talking about, but then we see some pictures of BMDs. So, I don't know. But we do see that there are forces in Irpin today, at least from these pictures. But that may be wrong. It may be in an area around Irpin. It may be in like Bucha or Hostomel, and they may have just got it wrong. I don't know, but it's in that general area. So we're going to move on from this area, and we're going to go over here, where we can see that there were the remains of a shot-down Su-30 that was near Kyiv today. There's the picture of it. You can see the tail fins still sitting there, sticking up a little. That's really crazy because it kind of looks like this plane kind of like flopped into the ground on its belly, and it just kind of like pressed down on itself. That'd be an interesting way for the plane to crash. Usually you think that they dive straight in the ground, or the tail would hit first, and then the rest of the plane would just shred itself to pieces. But this one looks like it still has a general outline, so I guess it just smacked flat into the ground somehow. Anyways, moving on from that, speaking of that Su-30, we can see that Poroshenko talked to the man who shot down this Su-30. That's what they claim, is that this man called Albert shot the Su-30 down, and Poroshenko runs up to him, and he's talking to him like he just saw like a three-pointer basketball shot at a basketball game. I'll just let y'all watch it though, because it's really funny how excited Poroshenko was about this.
Оце наш український герой. Як вас звати? Альберт. Це його звати Альберт. І 2 години тому він сьогодні збив російський літак. Де впав літак? Де це було?
За зданнями.
Це був Су-30? Альберт, дуже дякую.
Кажу українському народу.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Фантастично. Дякую.
That's pretty cool, really, that we saw like the results of him shooting it down, and then we got to see the former president of Ukraine talking to the guy who shot him down. It's almost like they're doing a play-by-play up there in northern Kyiv these days. But going on further into the city, we can see a picture of a woman with a rifle. Well, oh my god, the link has gone and changed itself. It was a picture of a woman with a rifle slung over her back, and she was walking her child across a crosswalk in Kyiv. But apparently that link got mixed up, and now it's another link, or that one was replaced by this one. I don't really know, but we're going to move on down to the area of Zervka, because we've seen that there's been some rocket artillery damage in that town today. I'm going to show that to y'all real quick. It's rather self-explanatory, but the damage is extensive.
Щойно стався ракетний удар. Влучили в приватний сектор. Зараз шукаємо людей. Будьте обережні, слухайте сигнал тривоги.
I'm not really sure if any civilians were injured or killed in that attack. Hopefully they weren't. Hopefully everyone was out of that area. But considering that it's a decent way behind the lines, who knows? So before... Well, actually, no. I'll answer the questions in between Churnhead and the Krolevets area. So moving on to Churnhead, we had a lot of developments today. First off, we've seen that there was a large explosion in Churnhead. I'll show that to y'all right now. Moving on from the explosion, there's not really much that's known about the explosion. We just know that something is blown up within the past few hours in Churnhead because it happened during the night, which would be right now, just a few hours ago. So beyond that, we don't know what it hit or what it destroyed. We just know that there was an explosion in the area of Churnhead. We can also see that fighting has been renewed around the area of Churnhead. The person who put it up removed it. That's unfortunate. So anyways, it was a firefight. The firefights have begun again near Churnhead, which is suggesting that the Russians in that area may have actually been able to get some supplies put together to actually effectively launch an assault again, like they were doing at the beginning of the war. But who knows? But anyways, the footage was just of the sounds of the firefight. Regardless, we can see that another plane was shot down today near Churnhead, and this is actually a video of it. It's really amazing. I'll just let y'all watch it real quick. Both of the pilots ejected. But anyways, the pilots were captured later on. The Su-34 landed in a neighborhood and ejected the bombs, but it appears that none of the bombs exploded. So I'm going to show you all the captured pilot in Churnhead. I'm believing it's from the same... Yes, it's from the Su-34 that we just watched get shot down.
Гляну, что это. Дай ему котлет. Не-не-не, давайте его посадим, пускай видео. Тихо, тихо. Тише. Вам сколько приезжать? Дай, держи в руки.
Убери нахуй ногу.
Держи.
Тихо, пожалуйста. Ну тихо все! Тихо.
Это ты, сука, блядь, за сколько ты продался, блядь? По детям? О, братишка, заебись.
Что там, работает телефон?
Да.
Работает?
Да, заебись. Тихо. Телефон. Так, рот закрой.
Закрывайте рты, пожалуйста. Никому не звони.
Так, а ну, откуда?
Кто, что, как, где живешь, семья,
Now, I
мать.
just gotta say this about this pilot. I find it kind of interesting that he looks unfit. Usually, when I see pilots for the U.S. Air Force, they look rather fit and they have very stringent physical fitness standards, from what I know. But this guy is flying an Su-34, which is just a bomber version of the Su-27, and yet this guy looks like he's he's just your average football dad or something with a beer gut. I kind of find that really weird that the Russians aren't apparently enforcing any kind of like stringent physical fitness standards for their pilots, but it's evident in that video that they're not. Moving on to the center of the city, we can see that there were some unexploded bombs from the aircraft in Churnhead. Here are the pictures of that. Luckily, none of them exploded. That may suggest that they never left the pylons of the plane, and these bombs maybe skid somewhere or something. I don't really know how that happened. That's all speculation on my part, but luckily none of them exploded from what was shown. So moving on from that, we're finally going to move on to our last little clip of this whole entire ordeal in Churnhead, and that we can actually see the guy who shot down the plane. This guy was a clerk a week and a half before the war, but today he got to shoot down the Su-34, and that's the man who did it. He's posing for a picture, looking proud as all get out. He is the clerk who shot down a Russian bomber with a man-pad. That's really cool. Honestly, he's going to have stories to tell after the war about how he shot that thing down over Churnhead. That'll be a story he'll tell for the rest of his life. So that was very cool. And now we'll move on to another little bit of questions before I move on to the Krolovet Sumy area, because we've had a decent amount of stuff in this area that I didn't know the location of. I'm just throwing all the location unknown stuff in this one spot. And so let me see what the questions have got. Let's see here. Oh, wow, this chat is going fast. Wow, thank you so much, everyone. Make sure to keep the comments up, because I'll try and answer as many as I can, and I might get to yours. That doesn't look like the guy they identified as a pilot earlier. If you're talking about the one I just showed in Churnhead, from what I was finding out, that guy was the one who was in Churnhead, and so he must be the pilot. He must be at least one of the pilots. You're maybe talking about another one, because they've captured a lot of pilots today. There's another one down in Mykolaiv. I believe there may even be two. But you may be thinking about one of those. Or maybe I got them mixed up, and that guy is from Mykolaiv, but the location told me he was in Churnhead. Who knows? But we know that there was pilots captured because they did eject, and they did it successfully and didn't get themselves killed. Fat pilot, lol. Yeah, fat guy in a little coat, if you know what I'm saying. Georgia and Chechnya should join together and make a second front. They fight for their independence in Georgia, can get back their breakaway states, and then they can meet up with the Ukrainians. Oh, meet up with the Ukrainians. You're suggesting that the Ukrainians launch an offensive into Russia? Now, that would be tough. And you know the Russians will start threatening nuclear war if they did that, most likely. But, you know, it's possible considering the logistics situation. But then again, you know, once the Ukrainians start pushing, the advantage would turn towards the Russians, because they would be pushing much closer to their railheads, and so the army would be better supplied. Gotta remember, it's all about supply. Like any offensive revolves around supply, and defense doesn't revolve around supply as much. You know, in terms of like the actual logistics of moving it, it just relies about keeping it, because it's very easy to get your you know, supplies destroyed in defensive. But anyways, moving on from that, because that's getting sidetracked. Let's see, the Ukrainian army much nicer than I would be to the Russians. Yeah, they are. They really are. Because I don't really know why in all the videos they're always so nice, because you can just see that this plane was trying to drop bombs on their city, maybe killing civilians in the process, and yet they still treat them civilly. It's a good thing they do. I don't really suggest that you just do unwarranted war crimes against the Russians out of anger, because, you know, then you're kind of like stepping down to the level of these people. But, you know, I can understand if people think that because they're getting enraged and all that stuff. But, you know, I just want to remind everyone to kind of keep a little bit civil and decent, because although they are invading a country and they're kind of monsters for doing that, at least the higher ups in the government are, most of them are still just people mostly like Ukrainians. And so while, you know, I do say that they have to be destroyed because they're invading a country and there's no other choice but to fight them, I do kind of feel sympathy for him, just a little. Um, let's see. Putin sent in pawns. He did. Experience was more important. I don't know. And the bots do keep coming. I'm sorry, everyone, if there's bots in the chat. Apparently, the chat's moving incredibly fast, and I know my mods are working on this as fast as possible. They're a great team of mods. All of them are. But there's a lot of chats coming in. But if y'all want to keep on asking questions, don't slow down the chat for that. They'll catch up to the bots eventually. Don't worry. I have faith in my mods. I'm like doing a fall of faith with them. Take down evil Russia and China CCP. It's the only way to save the world future. Yeah, I mean, like, China hasn't really done anything right now. I think they're really waiting. If we want to get into grand play strategies, I think the Chinese have made the Russians think that they're going to be friends, but I believe what China is doing is that they're lessening the amount of power that Russia has, you know, according to like world prestige. You know, people are going to think less of them after this war in terms of their military might. They're going to think less about them economically, and so Russia will truly diminish from this perceived false idea of being a superpower into they're actually going to be viewed as a regional power, kind of like Finland, really, or Kazakhstan. They're just going to be viewed as a country that has a lot of land but really nothing to it. And then the Chinese have removed all competition on mainland Asia, because India, while it's growing, it doesn't have like the competitive value that Russia has at the moment. You know, because Russia had a lot of figures on paper, and now the Chinese are, you know, gave them a little bit of a green light to let them wear themselves down. And so I believe that the Chinese are trying to weaken one of their rivals on the Asian continent, because they haven't been friends for long, you see, because they've had a lot of fights over the Manchurian border. So this is kind of like a quick little move, in my opinion, on the Chinese to try and gain their superiority over all of the Asian continent and be able to kind of have their own sphere of influence without the Russians adding in anything. And you know, that's kind of moving into, and I'm going to keep this brief now that I got down this rabbit hole. This is about the Ukraine war, and I'm going to keep this brief. I believe what they're trying to do is weaken the Russians, so that way they can start trying to make economic partners out of all the former Soviet republics. They've already done it with Afghanistan. You know, they've like tried to fund them with loans and stuff. I believe they'll start doing that with these other former Soviet republics. Afghanistan was not one of those, but they'll start trying to do it with this, so that way they can extend their sphere of influence even further. You know, like they're already doing in Africa and kind of like the Central Asia area. They're going to do it up here as well. That's why I'm thinking they like approved Russia's little green light thing. They're not doing anything because everyone knows they're wanting to do something with Taiwan, but no one's expecting them to go out here into the former Soviet countries and start making economic puppets out of these countries. No one's expecting that. And it would get them a lot of supplies. Like the Turkmens have a lot of oil, and so they'd be adding like kind of like a puppet country that provides them with oil. You know, if you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of resource value out here that the Russians would like to hold, but once they get weakened after this war, even if they win or lose, they'll be weaker. The Chinese will feel more empowered to do stuff out here, and they won't have to worry about the Russians really standing in their way as much. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm not really just saying some grand conspiracy theory stuff, but moving on. And Ukraine is still keeping their cool around officers. That's true. Let's see, it's because they are prisoners of war, they are probably not trained. That's true as well. That pilot was apparently in Syria in the past. Really? I would love to get some information on that, because if he was in Syria in the past, that would be interesting to know that this guy has actually had a bit of experience, like some pilots in the Russian Air Force do. Fight me, Ruskies. How do you go about fact-checking these posts? Usually there's not a lot of fact-checking that's really needed to be done, because it's not like I have to have a verified academic source for these things. You know, the vehicle has a Z on it. If it has a C, a Z, a V, or an O, it's a Russian vehicle, and then I get the location. And if I don't have the location, it goes in this area of the map over here. It goes into the unknown area. This is the location unknown spot. And then some of the location unknown spots go into areas that I'm very sure that I've seen before, but something else has happened in them, and so they go somewhere else, but most of them are in that area up there. And so I try and trust the captions as much as possible, but sometimes that's wrong. Like a lot of the little markers up here in Bucha and Irpin actually kind of belong in Hostomel, but it's generally like all the same area, so it doesn't really matter. It's like the general Hostomel, Bucha, Irpin area, so you're getting the picture that they're in that area, but you don't. But it's not exact. None of the markers are like perfectly exact to the location except for a handful of them. But there's not really a lot of fact checking that's involved in video posts because the facts are practically in the video. It's not really like the Ukrainians can fabricate an entire Russian convoy, and it's not really like the Russians are going to fabricate a whole lot of Ukrainian stuff. So the videos kind of speak for themselves, and they don't really require as much fact checking as like a written source would. Is that not a fuel pod? Let's go check again. No, that's a bomb, I believe. Let's pull up an external, Russian external fuel pods. Let's look at a picture of those. For aircraft, we need to find one for like air Su-34. Let's do that. No, they're an entirely different shape. If we look at both of these side by side, look at that right there, and look at that. That's a different shape. Has an entirely different color as well. Let's pull up a Fab 500 bomb and see if we can just find a normal picture of that. Fab 500. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the bomb. Like, that picture right there is the exact same thing right there. That's a Fab 500. So that's not a fuel tank at all. That's a bomb. They just didn't explode. So that being said, now we know it's a bomb for sure. So the title was pretty true. Let's see. Putin signed his death certificate with this war. By the way, Pavel, could you don't tell us about the Ukrainians if you answer this question, but could you tell us how things are going with the Russians where you are? Are y'all pushing them back? Or are y'all holding? Or are y'all losing ground? Because I'd like to know, but please don't tell us anything about what the Ukrainians are doing, because I don't want that in the chat. That may have y'all found out and have some extra information to the Russians. Let's see. The other dude was found dead in the field, didn't see any bite marks. Interesting. I got an idea. How many wounded would have up to this point if they lost 10,000 man so far? The rate of wounded has to be higher. Usually, in my head, I always do like a 2 or 3 to 1 ratio of wounded versus killed. And so usually I think in my head, if there's one wounded guy, there's usually 2 to 3 wounded people. And so if they have like 10,000 dead, that means they probably have somewhere around 20 to 30,000 wounded. That's kind of like my rule of thumb number whenever I look at like historical war casualty reports. The wounded are always almost 2 to 3 times greater in number than the killed. Let's see, it's American. Oh, wow, there goes the chat. But keep on bringing on the comments, and make sure to throw a like down as well as if you like the answers. You think Russia is waiting to see if any other neighboring country attempts to help Ukraine so that they have another excuse to invade more countries? Well, I don't think so at this point, because things have gone so poorly for them here, and we know that their logistical abilities are handicapped just because that's how the Russian army operates. And 90% of the Russian army is tied up in here. And so they only have... and when I say Russian army, I don't mean the Russian armed forces. I'm talking about just the ground forces. 90% of them are in Ukraine right now. And so going off of that, they only have another 10%, and those are just making sure that the bases have their grass mowed and everything is kept up at the military bases. They don't really have anything else to work with. And that's why when they've been threatening Finland for the past few days, talking about if you join NATO, there will be dire consequences, what would they really do? There's really nothing that they have left. It's not like they can throw another group of army soldiers at Finland because they're using them all up in Ukraine. So, that being said, I don't think they'll use it as an excuse to invade any other countries, because if anything would happen in that situation, they would be the ones getting invaded because they just don't have any forces to back up any threats anymore. Russia will be split in half like Germany after World War II. The difference is China will force all Russia to the west and let Chinese citizens live in the east market. I don't know about that, because a lot of people are into land conquest. Like a lot of people still kind of revolve around the idea that most countries are looking for land, but nowadays countries are looking for puppets. It's not really about directly controlling a country, because everyone's kind of found out that's really tough to do. That's why Afghanistan still exists with a Taliban emirate, because people have just given up. I mean, like, the Soviets tried to win over it, and they couldn't. The Americans tried, and they couldn't. And we found out now that if there's an insurgency, it'll just last forever. It will last until your country just does not exist anymore. And so it's more important to try and install puppet governments and just have like a sphere of influence over that country than it is to really actually like control the land. And so that's what the modern world kind of revolves around. It's more around puppets than actually controlling it. Because if Russia actually won in Ukraine, you wouldn't see Ukraine like turn into the Russian Federation. All of this would just be Russia. This would still be Ukraine, but it'd be called something else. It'd be called something like the People's Republic of Ukraine or something like that. But it would be something that's pro-Russian, and it'd be a puppet, and it'd be a military ally of the Russians. That's what's important. They don't actually have to control the land to have it under their control, if you know what I'm saying. It can be controlled by a puppet, and Russia still controls it to a large degree, much like Belarus. So moving on from that, I'll answer like 2 more questions, and then we'll move on. Let's see. Just listen, watch, and you guys can always fact check what he says yourself. Use critical thinking, guys. I think that's in support of me, so thank you. I try and make sure all this is accurate as much as possible. Of course, some of it will be off a bit. The markers will be off by a few miles or something like that, but usually the information holds up to scrutiny, and the locations that are being reported are true. So Putin gave Xi the impression it would be a relatively smooth and quiet takeover like 2014, but this military incursion got too loud and messy for China's liking. The CCP keeps their actions quiet. Yeah, yeah, they do for sure, and that's why I'm saying that they're not going to focus on Taiwan, because Taiwan just has too much international support. Now they see that the economic sanctions that have been levied against Russia could probably be levied against them as well within a heartbeat. Even if it's to the detriment of the American economy, it would still probably happen. And so what they're going to start doing is that they're going to start trying to build their influence further west instead, probably, according to what I'm thinking. Although I don't have a lot of knowledge to back this up at the time, because I'm not really well read on Chinese policy. But I'm sure they'll try and extend west and start growing a sphere of influence out here, so that way they can get some control over major oil and other resources that the Kazakhs and the Turkmens have exclusively, and also the other smaller states, the Stan states. But anyways, moving on. One more question, and then I'm going to start covering Sumy and Kharkiv. Let's see. The United States went on an industrial rampage during World War II. If China stopped selling us anything, we would make up for it in a year. China has things we want but don't need. Fairly true. A lot of people don't think that America has a decently large manufacturing base, but I can say, living in a manufacturing city, I'm not going to say what city I live in, but I can tell y'all that the manufacturing industry is still pretty strong in America, actually, at least from where I live. There's a steel factory nearby. There's a large steel mill. It's one of the largest in the country. It produces steel pipes. There's also a large cement factory near where I live, and there's a whole bunch of car manufacturers and stuff like that. But nonetheless, the manufacturing is pretty high. Let's actually pull up how much manufacturing does the U.S. do compared to China. I'd just like to see. China produces 28% of the world's manufacturing output. The U.S. produces about half of that. So if they're producing 28, that means that America's producing around 14%, which isn't bad. I mean, like, considering that we're a technologically based, service-based kind of like economy these days, that's not bad that we still produce 14% of the economic manufacturing output in the world, so that's not bad. And so we're going to move finally on to the location unknown videos. There's also a great one down here. We'll save the best for last. We're going to show y'all some abandoned T-90As. Some of Russia's best, according to them, with the Javelin cages on top. Apparently it's not really saving them from something. It looks like these are in perfectly fine condition, as a matter of fact. It really looks like they were just abandoned. Maybe because they ran out of gas, logistical problems strike again, but nonetheless, they're just abandoned T-90As in the field, and they have the Javelin cages on top, and it still didn't do anything for them because they got abandoned anyways. So anyways, we look at this video. This one's a good one because it's a bomb exploding. There was no casualties involved, but this woman was very shocked because I guess she didn't know that sound takes time to travel, and so the boom wouldn't hit her immediately, it'd be in a second. But nonetheless, I'll just show it to y'all. It's a little bit fun. It's funny because nothing happened to her and she got scared, but she found out very quickly that there was really no reason to be that scared. But I'll just show you all the video.
Господи!
it's kind of, I'm glad she wasn't harmed, but it was still kind of like a funny laugh, I guess, in the middle of the wars. And she thought they had been bombed because the boom had just finally reached her, and it was seconds after that one. But anyways, we could see that in this video, I actually found out later on that this maybe is in Melitopol, but I still don't have a confirmed location. But the Ukrainian protester was shot in the leg. It wasn't extremely graphic, so I don't think YouTube is going to do anything about it, but I'll just show it to y'all. And I'll go back to the beginning of the video because it happened right then. And he got shot in the leg.
Вы чё, блядь? Шо ты?
It's messed up how the Russians treat civilians, and they love to claim that they're not treating civilians poorly, but that obviously shows they are. And they're firing warning shots over the crowd as well. So they dressed the guy's wound, and then I believe they carted him off, but I'm going to cut the video short so I don't keep y'all here too long. But nonetheless, it would be pretty funny if that crowd just surged forward and overran those two soldiers and just beat them to death at that point. Because you can't say now, for the most part, that the Russians in some areas are just people, because that was deliberate. You know, I mean, like they could have chose to have not done that, but then they did. You know, and so it doesn't really look good for him, is pretty much what I'm trying to say. Moving on, we can see that some Russian units have apparently been playing a lot of Angry Pigs lately, and they've decided to armor up their trucks, but what they armored them up with was wood. And as we all know, wood is not the perfect armor, but I guess it kind of works, but I wouldn't really expect any of this to work. Really none of it. Like, that's just a normal pallet, it looks like. You know, and it, like, what is up with this? Like, what do these sticks serve a purpose for? I don't even know. I mean, like, really all of that's useless. I don't know what that would do. But nonetheless, they're putting wood on them. So that's something new, I guess. So now we're finally going to move on to the best video that's come out today. It's probably movie worthy. But anyways, an Mi-35 was shot down. We know that both pilots were killed because there's really no way to bail out of a helicopter, and it went down pretty fast and pretty quick. But it wasn't anything graphic. I'll just show it to y'all. It was very impressive to see, because you could actually see the manpad track, like the missile from the manpad track the helicopter, hit it, and then the helicopter go down, all from an aerial view that's higher up than the helicopter. Now that's something. You don't really see that often. I'm going to show that to y'all again. No, that's pretty wild. Yeah, I don't, like, I'm not really going to attest to how horrendous that was, is that both the pilots were killed, but I will say that that was an impressive sight to see everything happen from an aerial view. You never see that. Usually they're behind a building or something, but you got to see all of that, like the usual process of shooting a helicopter down from an aerial view. And that's something that's very rare, and I've never actually seen before until today, so that was really impressive to me that someone was able to capture that footage. Anyways, we can see that there was an SPG near Sumy. This appears to be one that was captured yesterday, but more videos come out today as the Ukrainians appear to be climbing all over it and capturing it. I believe these tanks are called a Mista S, MSTA-S, and they're a larger self-propelled gun. So, you know, that information being said, they've captured an SPG. I don't know if they'll be able to use it or not, but it's good that they caught one, captured it nonetheless. The mayor of Sumy declared today that Sumy is dangerous to leave. He showed a convoy of civilian vehicles that had been looted by the Russians as the civilians were trying to escape, and he was urging people to try and not leave the city because it probably wasn't going to be safe.
Всі машини проверяють. Прошла колонна. Поспускали колеса, порізали. В кожній машині. Дивіться, люди, що вони, сука, творять. Кожну машину перерізали колеса.
And I'll speed up the video to get to the next vehicle.
Дивіться.
As you can see, the Russians just threw out all the clothes, all the food, and all the stuff that was in the car, pretty much looking for anything of worth.
Тварі. Оце отак, дивіться.
Anyways, I'll cut the video short because then he's just walking to the next car and he never actually makes it to it in the video. But nonetheless, apparently some bad stuff is happening around Sumy. I don't know if Sumy's been encircled because I haven't gotten an official declaration from the Ukrainian government that they have been. But it appears from that video that they may have been, perhaps. But I don't know what road that was exactly, so I might not be entirely accurate in saying that. That's just an assumption on my part. So now we're going to move on to the area around Okurta. The names are really hard to pronounce. I'm sorry. But anyways, the thermal power plant was destroyed today, and 3 people unfortunately died in the destruction of the thermal power plant. I'll show you all the pictures real quick. It's very unfortunate. Apparently the Russians hit it with some kind of missile. But anyways, there was 3 people dead found under the rubble. Unfortunately for them, that was their last day alive in Ukraine, and I'm terribly sorry for that because it's really bad. It's a really sad thing to see civilians get killed in any war in any perspective. You know, it was a big deal when it was happening in Iraq a little bit, where the Americans at home were making a huge deal about civilian casualties. And we can see that the Russians don't even try and really avoid them. They really just welcome them as they just hit targets indiscriminately, regardless whether civilians be there or not. So I'm going to cover this one thing in Belgorod. I'll answer a couple more questions, and then we'll start covering Kharkiv. So we've seen that there was explosions in Belgorod last night. This footage came out some while ago, but I'll just show it to y'all. It just shows 2 explosions. No one knows what it is or why it happened. We just know that there was 2 explosions in Belgorod. That may have been a Ukrainian counterstrike with maybe a missile, but that's an assumption on my part. I don't really know anything for sure. And that being said, I'm going to move on to the questions. So what do we got here? Okay, we already covered that. Let's see. Why no chatter on the buildup or position of Russian naval fleet? Well, we actually did cover that a while ago. There's actually a clip down here, but I cover everything day by day, so I don't talk about yesterday's or days before events in the stream, or otherwise I'd be here for like 10 hours. But yes, it was actually documented as a day 8 event. There was a video of the Russian naval forces moving towards Odessa from, according to the video's title. I couldn't really confirm if they were, and I really couldn't confirm where they are, but it appeared that they were somewhere in that area. But yes, I did cover that. But there's really not much to cover right now because no video evidence has come out of a naval invasion. No news reports have come out about it. And so I can't really attest whether they've made it there or not. And naval news in this war is less forthcoming than ground news. So it's really hard for me to cover stuff that really can't be documented. I'm sorry about that. But yes, I have been covering that to a small extent. Did you see the video of the Australian news crew that got ambushed at a fake checkpoint by the Russians? No, I haven't. If you'd like to join the Discord and share that with us, I'd love to see it, because that would be news to me. Let's see. Can you do a metadata check to see the location, time, etc.? I don't really think so. I don't really know. I'm not really a tech savvy with that sort of stuff, so maybe I could, but I don't really know. The Russian money is backed by gold now. In a few years, they'll be better off money-wise than us here in the USA. I don't know about that. Usually money never rebounds once it starts to inflate. It never deflates, because deflation is about as bad for an economy as inflation. And so if the ruble went from being less than a roebuck to being worth as much as a US dollar, the Russian economy would just implode on itself and it wouldn't exist anymore, because deflation is really bad. Like, you think inflation is bad, wait until you see deflation. That's even worse. Let's see. Yes, I heard that earlier. Why does this guy, who does this guy think he is? I don't know who y'all are talking about. Putin focused on the wrong history. He did. But China would be involved. I think that's a discussion in the comments. We did lose to Vietnam, though. Yeah. I don't know what that's in reference to. God bless Pavel. I can agree. God bless Pavel. He's over there fighting right now. Hopefully he can get some information to me soon about some more hardcore stuff around Kyiv so that way I can report on it. Of course, no Ukrainian locations involved in that, but I would love to get some more hardcore information about what's going on around Kyiv if he has it. The other hasn't been dropped in a crash, so color defers. Dummy bomb, huh? Running out of smart bombs. Well, they say that due to the sanctions, that 60% of the guidance systems inside of these cruise missiles can no longer be imported, and so that cuts down their missile production capacity to around 60%. Well, 40%. And so that's a huge drop, and so I think they're going to start reserving their cruise missile inventory because they always have to be worried about the fear of a war with NATO, and so they always have to have some weapons stockpiled for that. Why would Macron say the worst is yet to come after meeting with Putin? But I don't believe he's explained why he thinks that. I don't really know, and I wouldn't really be able to talk on that because he's privy to more information than I am, and so he has a reason for saying that, but I wouldn't know what it would be. The Su-34 or Su-27 doesn't really carry external fuel tanks because of the large internal fuel. I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know. Why all the unexploded bombs? Probably because this aircraft was shot down before it could drop the bombs, and so maybe the bombs never left the pylons. I was saying that earlier because when the bombs are attached to the pylons, I don't believe they're armed yet. I believe they only get armed when there's an electrical charge on them to drop them off a pylon. I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm not a ground mechanic or anything on aircraft, so I'm not really sure if that's how the system to drop a bomb works, but that's at least what I think I know. So that may be why the bombs didn't explode. How come the Russian Air Force isn't doing more? Because they don't have air supremacy, and one thing y'all have to remember, and this is incredibly important, like logistics, is that aircraft are usually produced in batches, and once they're produced, they're never produced again. And so, all the IL-76s in the Russian Air Force, if they lose those, they usually, well, actually, I don't think they'll be able to like kind of recoup those losses at all because all the IL-76s that ever would have been built were built around 30 years ago. And so it's not like they can lose 4 and just say, oh, produce 4 more. It's not really like World War II. In the modern world, you produce them in kind of like a batch, and so you produce like 1,000 of them over the course of 6 years, and then you never do anything else. And there was a whole load of parts made with them to replace with the aircraft that are running. And usually the parts side of factories that produce these aircraft keep running for years. But the actual amount of serial production number aircraft that are made are usually limited. So that may be why they're not using a lot of aircraft, is because Russian aircraft manufacturing isn't what it used to be during Soviet times. They don't just pump out hundreds of them now on like a yearly basis. And so if they lose any aircraft, they'll probably lose them for quite some while, and it'll be hard for them to recoup losses. And so that may be why they're not using them a lot, because the air supremacy is still contested, and a lot of them could get shot down like we're seeing today. So that may be why. Better yet, there were sending planes to Sweden airspace. Saw that on YouTube. I was like, yep, they're going to push it more. They probably won't. Wait a minute, did they say Sweden? To get to Sweden, you would have to fly over either Norway or Finland. Or they flew through this gulf here towards Sweden and probably went over the Gotland Island. Or I believe that's what it's called, the Gotland Island. And they may have done that. I don't really know. But that's kind of a common thing for the Russians to do. They usually fly somewhere in this Baltic Sea area. But anyways, moving on from that, I'll answer a few more questions, and then we'll move on to Kharkiv. What do you think the outcome will be? Question mark, question mark. I believe the outcome will be Ukraine wins. Because, they're in a very good position. The Russian logistics are poor. They put too many troops in the area now, and just they can't supply them all. And so now it's all a matter of just picking them off and slowly pushing them back. They broke the siege around Kharkiv. They broke the siege on the western side of Kyiv. Right now, I'll get to this news later, but they're actually halfway recapturing Kherson at the moment, from what I was told and what I saw on some sources today. So I believe the Ukrainians actually have a good chance of winning. And now a lot of people in the West, analysts in NATO, are saying that as well. So the chat has exploded. I thank you all so much for asking questions, but I'll only answer a few more, and then we're going to move on. Bomb that drop have safety pins that need electricity to take off. That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I believe that little electrical charge that they need is given when the bomb is dropped off the pylon and it gets a little charge. Anything on Odessa? Not today. We had some stuff yesterday and the day before on day 8 and day 9 in the area, but we haven't gotten anything about it today. And so I believe that everything is kind of stopped around Odessa at the moment, or there's a lack of information coming out from that area. But I'll try and keep everyone updated on that once news comes out, because we don't know if there's a naval invasion underway there right now, according to the news I've gotten. And so, saying that, we're finally going to move on to Kharkiv. There's been a lot more developments in Kharkiv today than there were in other days. We've seen that more Russian vehicles have been captured around the area of Kharkiv. I'll show you all that video. They say something like 30 vehicles, which could be nearly half of a BTG or more.
Символічно.
Символічна 200-та бригада. Прийшла і пішла далі 200-тись.
Вони кинули?
Да, кинули техніку, втікаючи під нашими обстрілами.
Скільки одиниць техніки?
Близько 30 одиниць. Танки, МТЛБ, КАМАЗи, Урали.
Чого тут синьо-жовтий знак на тому танку?
Це вже наші намалювали для місцевих, щоб показати, що танк не несе загрози.
Цей танк можна теоретично взяти на українське озброєння?
Звичайно, звичайно.
So I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Here's some of the more captured vehicles. But nonetheless, they captured apparently 30 vehicles in that one convoy alone. And so, if you look at that, that's about half of a BTG, and if that BTG had been depleted in combat of vehicles, that may have been an entire BTG that just got all their vehicles captured right then. And if all their vehicles were captured, that probably means that the entire BTG was maybe wiped out or they surrendered, one or the other. Moving on from that, we've seen that there are more destroyed Logi vehicles near Kharkiv. I can show you that right now. Just loads of them just lined up in this field. And this is only exacerbating that logistical problem I was talking about at the beginning of the stream.
На территории Украины. Вот так вот. Кто боится этих машин с буквами Z? Вот смотрите, они все стоят сзади. Дальше они ехать пока не собираются. Никто их дальше не пропустит. Давайте все вместе держимся. Слава Украине. Все будет порядок.
So I'm going to do something real quick. This is going to seem kind of like pointless, but let's count how many vehicles is in this row. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 vehicles wide, and I can't really tell how deep it is, but let's assume it's 5 vehicles deep. So you got 20 vehicles in that one spot, and he's standing on another one, and we don't know how many are in front of him. But that's half of a convoy that's needed to supply a single BTG right there in that one picture. And so, we already said they didn't have enough to supply all the BTGs in Ukraine, and now they're losing more logistical vehicles that are needed to keep on supplying the 62% that they can supply if they're running all of their logistical vehicles every day all the time. And so we know that the logistical situation is only getting worse as time goes by. It's not getting better, even with the acquisition of civilian vehicles. Now they're only kind of filling in for the attrition that they've suffered over the course of this week and a half. Moving on from that, we're going to talk about the 2 destroyed Ukrainian T-80s near Kharkiv. Now, I know that there's not a lot of videos that come out about the Ukrainians, but every once in a while, because it would be aloof of me to not admit that there are losses on the Ukrainian side, but it is true that they are at a much lower rate, an incredibly lower rate, than on the Russian side. That's for sure. But anyways, I'll just show you all the T-80s. There was 2 of them that were destroyed. And every time we see destroyed Ukrainian vehicles, they're always in a much smaller number than the Russians, which suggests that they're probably more successful at destroying the Russians than the Russians destroying them, if you know what I'm saying. So, that being said, luckily, there's only 2 of them. You know, it could be like a Russian situation where you just see like 8 of them on a road, but it's only 2, so the Ukrainians aren't losing that bad of numbers from what's being published. And so I still have full faith that they're going to win this war, because based off of everything we're getting, it looks like they are winning. logistically, tactically, and actually on the field, they're doing better in almost every way. We can see also in this picture that there was another large convoy abandoned near Kharkiv, and another area than the last one. I'll show y'all this though.
Сбитая колонна россиян, здоровеннейшая, не знаю сколько, вот, Санька Рыжий передает.
Now this looks like that entire supply convoy I'm talking about, because it looks like it stretches on forever in that direction, and it also stretches on a good way the other way. So this may have been an entire convoy that was trying to supply a
Они
BTG.
думали, что мы вообще какие-то хохлы, но тут оказались...
And you can also see, this is something really interesting, is that they're carrying like riot gear equipment, because that's a riot helmet with a shield, and it also looks like they're carrying like police vests. And so these may be added vehicles onto an already long convoy for a BTG, and they're adding that miscellaneous equipment I was talking about with like riot gear and stuff. So that's interesting.
Козаки українські, котрі розбили цих окупантів в пух і прах. Дивіться, вони їхали зі звичайними шоломами, зі щитами. Вони думали, що
Let's see if we can get a better view of the convoy later on in the video.
навіки вічні. Так що эти ребята были разбиты, но доехали под Харьков.
That's kind of like a military police vehicle, the one with the red stripes on them.
И очень Харьков сильно. Есть много убит, не буду, видно пальцы. Вот, это беду. В любом случае стоим до конца.
There's a medical vehicle.
Никто не будет разгонять наши митинги.
Ah, yes, we can already see right there. You see that? That's a civilian vehicle. And they're already having to try and supplement some of their deficiencies with their normal amount of supply vehicles with civilian vehicles in their normal convoys. And so you can see that all the deficiencies I'm talking about are actually adding up in film. Like, they're all there. So that's really interesting to see that everything that everyone's saying is actually coming true when you look at the videos. Moving on from that, we can see that there was a ambush convoy near Kharkiv as well. This is another picture of a whole other convoy that was ambushed today. Show you all the pictures of that. This one looks like a somewhat smaller one, but nonetheless, it still destroyed vehicles, which is a great thing for the Ukrainians. It gives them a little bit of an upper hand. And also, it's still more logistical vehicles destroyed. And we know they're working with a limited number of them. As a matter of fact, let's pull up Ukrainian law. Oh, well, no, Russian losses. Russian losses as of March 4th. Images. Let's see if we got a little graphic here. On March 3rd, let's see how many, trucks. 374 cars. Let's see. 60 fuel tanks. So they destroyed 60 fuel trucks. And so going off of there's 8 fuel trucks needed for a single BTG to run each day. That means that if they've destroyed 60 fuel trucks, they've stopped almost 8 BTGs from getting fuel by destroying those 60 fuel trucks. It doesn't look like they've talked a lot about any other kind of supply vehicle, although we've seen a lot of evidence of it. Maybe they're including that in the car figure? I don't know. Let's see if we can get another little infographic on this. See, this is on the 3rd of March. Yeah, so let's see. Do we have 409 vehicles? So they don't talk about, cisterns. They're not talking a lot about the trucks either. We need to know the attrition numbers for the trucks, because if we actually know how many actual supply trucks have been destroyed, that gives us a good idea of how bad Russian logistics really are, considering that they have taken a lot of logistical losses. So moving on from that, we're going to move on to the left side of Kyiv, where we can see that I believe there was even another Su-34 was shot. It was removed. So unfortunately that one was removed, but I believe it was a video of another Su-34 being shot down over Kharkiv today. While there was one in Churnhead, I believe there was a second one in Kharkiv. And so we'll move on to the last one that we have from Kharkiv today, and that was there was an airstrike near the area of Kharkiv. So I'll just show you all that video real quick. It's rather self-explanatory.
Опять, короче, район где-то то ли парк Шевченко, то ли... О, летит, блядь. Сука! Твою мать! Пизда, блядь! Ёбаные суки, блядь!
It's very interesting how it's so loud that people resort to yelling. It tells you that it's incredibly loud and it's very fraying to the nerves to have such a large bomb. It was probably a Fab 500 that was dropped over there, but you know that's got to fray your nerves with something that big exploding so close to you. I mean, like, that's what they say that shell shock was caused from in World War One, was like the concussive force of all these shells landing around someone, and it messes with their equilibrium or something like that. I believe that was the explanation of shell shock in World War One. But finally, before we move on down to the southern front near Melitopol and all of the events that have happened in between Kherson and Mykolaiv today, I'm going to answer some more questions. So let's see what we got. Can confirm that's how fighter jets arm bombs was an AO in the U.S. Navy on F-18s. Wow, I can't believe I actually got that right. I don't really know a lot about how like the systems of dropping a bomb on a plane works, but that's really cool that I knew that. That's really neat. Let's see. Putin is not a fake black belt anymore. That pulled it. Oh, yeah, I heard about that like 2 days ago, I think. Russian army is advancing very fast now from the east. Where though? Because there's a lot of east. You know, it goes all the way from up here to down here. And so knowing specifically where in the east it is, northeast, central east, or southeast, would help me a lot with information. So if you could join the Discord and actually tell us the exact information you have and provide some sources so that way I can look into it, I could see about probably changing this map to further reflect that type of development. Uncle Joe Stalin. Putin thinks he's Stalin. He will kill everybody. Maybe. I don't know. Hi folks, Stockholm, Sweden here. Oh hey, welcome. It's good to have you here. I hope you find this this news relevant and informing. I guess that's the best way to put it. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're dealing with over there. Easy to root for Ukraine, but it's even easier to root for an individual. That's really true. Did all 3 first day. Came here to keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much, Babel. I'm very glad that you keep on coming back. I don't know how you're up over there every day at 5 o'clock, but I'm so happy that you still come back and watch these streams, because you've been a star of this stream ever since it began, really, since like day 2 or 3, and I'm very thankful that you're still around. Russia is losing so much. They are, and they're losing everywhere. And I would go over it, but I've gone over it so many times at this point. I mean, like, it's almost obvious at this point. Bombs don't arm until leaving the aircraft. Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of what I was saying, once there's a little electrical charge, when the bomb drops, when the bomb gets released from the plane, that little electrical charge arms them. So if you see what I'm saying, they are armed once they leave the aircraft. Will the Russians use the same bombing shelling tactics as in Georgia, Grozny, and Syria, Aleppo? Well, Grozny wasn't really in Georgia. Grozny is actually a republic within Russia, because Russia doesn't work the way the U.S. does with states. There's oblasts, republics, special autonomous regions. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of like administrative areas in Russia, but Grozny actually isn't a part of Georgia. It's always been a part of Russia. But Georgia, I believe what you're talking about is South Ossetia and Obzbekhan, or whatever this thing's called over here. But yeah, I think we're gonna start seeing that, talking about the mass artillery stuff like we saw in the Chechen wars and in Syria. I believe we'll start seeing that here. Yeah, I wonder if they have started to divert the ones they make for other countries. I don't really know. Hi from the USA. Hey, welcome to the stream. Slava Ukraine. Heroyam Slava. Oh, good. That's very good. Did Putin use them all in Syria? I don't know what y'all are talking about. Maybe. Maybe. The ISW reports that possible Ukrainian breakout pushed into Russia. What? Hey, hang on, I gotta pull that up. ISW, Ukraine pushes into Russia. I don't really... Let me just type in Ukraine pushes into Russia. I don't see anything about them pushing into Russia, but if you could provide me a source for that, I'd love to look at that if that's true. Let's see. Putin's family and friends are marked forever. Yeah, that's true. Are the drones doing significant damage? Yes, they are. They're doing a lot of damage as of the moment. according to the drone footage videos and what we've seen from the ground. So I would reference you back to the first week map because there's a decent amount of drone footage on it. At the Enforcer, what's the link to this map? Well, the link is on the Discord. So if you join my Discord server, go to the useful links section and the map's in there. And so if you want to find the map, that's the best place to find it. I saw a video of a giant Ukrainian encampment that had been abandoned. Hundreds of crates of mortars and mines and ammunition. Ouch. I believe I've seen that once, but I wasn't able to confirm where it was at. So it never gets put on the map, in terms of landmark locations like that, and they're not like mentioned as to where they are. I won't put those on the map because what if those were Russians in a Russian camp claiming it was Ukrainian, and I have no information to verify it as Ukrainian. So that's why it wasn't on this map, in case if I did see it. Perhaps the pilots are not arming them on purpose. Maybe. I don't really know. Well, I mean, like, considering that they're armed once they drop, and if they stayed on the plane until it crashed, they would just kind of do what they did there, and they wouldn't blow up. They would just sit around. So, I don't know. If that's his goal, why not launch first? If it's really going that far, things are going to get bad. So what are they waiting for? Plausible deniability? Who's going to be left to accuse them? That's a good point. That's a really good point. I don't really know why they're doing that. Blocka, contact the Ukrainian embassy in your area. Yeah, if you want to help out the Ukrainians, make sure to contact the embassy. I actually contacted them today. Haven't gotten a response back from them. But I did contact them today and send some stuff their way. I mean, like, I'm not the best at reporting anything, and all my information is used from public sources, but I was thinking maybe this one bit of information I'll show them will be something that maybe helps them, or maybe they already know about it. I don't know, but I was willing to just send it in the hopes that something maybe is new that they haven't seen before. As a retired USAF vet, the Russian military looks unprofessional right now. I admit I'm biased, but this invasion is comical by US military standards. It really is. Considering that they're using expired rations, you would never see that in the American military. I know I'm kind of biased because I'm American, but I mean, like, a lot of people over here even complain about the service at that, but I know that the people who are in the US Army complaining about the service here would just straight up, like, commit suicide if they were having to serve in Russia, because it looks like the Russians are doing terrible. I mean, like, in World War II, I believe it was at the Battle of Iwo Jima or Guadalcanal. No, it wasn't Guadalcanal because that was too early in the war. It was one of the later on islands during the war, but the Japanese were, like, subsisting off of nothing, and then one day they heard that the Americans were so well supplied that they had an entire ship, like a transport ship, come out and deliver ice cream to the fleet that was surrounding the island. That really apparently shook the morale of the Japanese, because they were like, wow, if they can just bring a whole ship out here for ice cream and we're like eating lentils, they must be doing great, because there's no way that we're doing this poorly and then they're doing as poorly as us, but they're getting ice cream on top of that. That must mean they've met all the basic needs for them to start bringing in, like, luxury food at that point. But that's at least from what I heard. That may not be entirely true. I don't know how they activate bombs now. Probably mostly electrically, but they used to have spinners on the tips, so the force of the wind would spin them in to activate the bomb. Interesting. I've seen those, and I thought that's how they were activated. But I don't really know. Because how would that work if they didn't drop the bombs and then they went back to an airfield? Did they just unspin them? Or once they spin all the way down, are they armed then? And they can't be unarmed? I don't really know how that would work. The bomb timers don't activate until they leave the actual aircraft by manually sending the bombs. In other words, they don't fuse on impact unless given sort of a spark. Okay, that's interesting. Horrible logistics. Entirely true. Putin needs a Putin. That's a very good one. I haven't heard that one yet. That's really smart. I'm going to remember you, Robert. That was a really smart one. Accurate reports on Ukrainian civilian and military casualties. Ukraine isn't forthcoming with casualty reports. And it's understandable because they're in a war and they're not wanting to release that kind of information, because I believe they're trying to keep as true to as possible to the information they have. And they don't want people to start losing hope in Ukraine just in case of the casualty statistics are higher than what they expected. And so they're trying to guard those as much as possible. So, I mean, like, a bit of propaganda on the Ukrainian side, but it's a kind of deserved propaganda, because unlike Russia that's trying to justify their offensive war that really has no base to really keep it going. Ukraine's trying to justify the survival of their country. And so, I guess I'm more lenient towards their kind of propaganda and bias of like not reporting things than I am Russia's. They flew over an island that is Swedish territory. Yep, then it's Gotland. Yeah, that's entirely what they did. It was the Gotland Island for sure. Because the Gotland Island's always something that Sweden's always been concerned about. Because they said if a war ever broke out, the Russians were going to invade them and Gotland Island first because it serves as a basing point, a very good basing point, and a strategic island in the middle of the Baltic Sea for the Russian Navy to operate out of. So they would capture that as one of the first things in a war with the West. But now it appears that they wouldn't have the ability to do that, considering that most of their stuff is tied up in Ukraine. Did you see about the news about the Antonov 225 being destroyed? Yes. Unfortunately, I did. It's actually under the day 8 and day 9 stuff up here, right here. And if you want to check that out, join the Discord, and it's under the useful links section, and you can go check out the videos for yourself. I believe I may have all the ones that have been published, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Yes, we got this vid 1,000 likes now. Let's make it 2,000. Dang, 1,000 likes! Wow, that's a lot. I think that's more than like all the other videos. Wow, thank you. Thank you all so much. 3 layers of protection, triple failsafe. I don't really know. I'm going to answer a few more questions, and then we're going to move on to Melitopol and Mykolaiv. No, they may have used Kaliningrad. I'm sorry if I'm having like a very bad lapse right there, but I forgot where Kaliningrad is. Oh well. I'll have to worry about that later. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. I'm not getting a lot of sleep because I'm trying to do like 3 things at one time, and this is almost like a full-time job getting these streams put together. So I'm not really like as sharp as attack as I usually am. But I'm trying. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry if I can't really think of where Kaliningrad is right now. They can also fly from Kaliningrad. Okay, I gotta pull it up. I gotta pull it up now. Google Maps. Let's pull up Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad in the Kaliningrad Oblast. Oh my god. I was just thinking about that like hours ago. It's in East Prussia. Oh my god. Dude, I'm that tired. I can't even remember that Kaliningrad is in East Prussia. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm really sorry about that. Ukraine was Russian planes manufacturer in the Soviet Union. They were, and they were also a major manufacturer of their ATGM systems and all of their stuff that was kind of more high-tech like that. The Ukrainians actually provided a lot resource-wise to the Soviet Union. It was incredibly important. And on top of that, probably the most important thing was that they were a breadbasket. You can talk about, like, we can talk about they produce planes, ATGMs, but if you can't provide the basics, then it's all pointless. And Ukraine is the breadbasket for sure. They produce a lot of food. Let's see. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man, there's a lot of them. Is the Russian convoy being destroyed or just sitting there on the highway? Are the soldiers still there with the convoy, or have they deserted? Also, what do you think of Russian soldier morale? That's a good string of 3 questions right there. I like your questions. First off, the convoy is just sitting there and it's not moving, and it is being destroyed at the moment. The Ukrainians say that they're hitting it. Probably not destroying the entirety of it, but they're probably destroying a pretty good bit and pieces of it that are in important areas. Like if you ever see the video, you can click on the Discord and go to the picture of the 40-mile long convoy of failure. But if you ever look at the satellite images of it, in some places that thing is 3 wide across the road, and so it blocks all the lanes. And I bet you if a drone hit that 3 wide area 3 deep, you would have this giant blockage on the road that would stop traffic on both sides until they cleared it. And that could take hours, or maybe even a day. So let's see, are the soldiers still there with the convoy, or have they deserted? I don't have any information to confirm either way whether they have deserted or stayed with it, so I can't really answer that one, sadly. And what do I think of Russian soldier morale? I think it's incredibly low. At this point, we've seen a lot of abandoned tanks, and someone brought up a really good point, is that usually these tanks are filled with ammo, and if a crew was high morale, they wouldn't want these tanks to fall into the hands of the enemy intact. Just to be refueled later. And so they would rig the tank to explode so that way they could at least, in a way, scuttle the tank and stop the Ukrainians from using it, yet they're not doing that. And so that may suggest that they have low morale, and their morale is so low they don't even care about weapons falling into the hands of the enemy. So I believe that the morale is low. And also due to the fact that we've seen so many videos of desertions and prisoners of war from the Russian side that pretty much admit that they didn't even know they were going to war and they didn't want to be in war. Going off of that, I would assume that the morale is low. So moving on from that, one last question and then we're going to move on. Why haven't the Russians set up a FOB and an LSA in the north yet? That would go a long way in alleviating the logistical bottleneck. Yeah, kind of. I mean, but you do have to think about this as well. A FOB, we'll go back to this map here. Let's say that they put a FOB like right here, kind of like, yeah, like right in the Chernobyl exclusion zone pretty much. But if they put a FOB here, there's going to be a problem. The trucks still have to transport all that cargo from the railhead down there. And then pretty much all you're doing is you're going to be adding an extra amount of time to unload the trucks that came from the railhead and then load the trucks that are going to be going elsewhere, because the travel time of that cargo will still be the same, and you'll have to provide a whole bunch more trucks up here to get the cargo down here, and then have the trucks taken on further. And just no matter how the math really works out when you think about it, there's really just no way that they can really solve that problem. They would have to build a railhead further down, so that way the trucks on their own would be making shorter trips instead of having the trucks take the 2.5 hour journey to here, and then unload just enough supplies for another convoy of equal size to then pick that up and then transport it further on. And also, fuel cannot be really dropped off at a FOB that easy, because they have to build fuel silos. They'd have to unload that fuel into those silos, and constructing silos would take time. And so it'd probably just be more efficient for them to pick it up at the railhead from the rail cars and then just take it to where they're going. And so I believe that this isn't really going to be more about FOBs. I think it's more about, for Russia's logistical strategy, it's more about constructing railheads. And so we'll have to see if this war lasts a long time. Will the Russians begin to construct railheads into Ukraine, considering that Ukraine destroyed all the railheads? And so that being said, we're going to move on to the area of Melitopol, Kherson, and Mykolaiv, and also Bashtanka, because there was something that happened up there. So anyways, we can see that the Russians and the civilians are getting in clashes in Melitopol today. I'll just show you all that video. As you can see, they can't really dull the Ukrainian spirit. It's just the fervor for independence and the belief that the Russians shouldn't be there, which is an entirely perfectly fine belief. It's just too strong to stop them. Even when you're firing warning shots over their head, they still keep coming. And that tells you that those people are dedicated to their independence. And just from that show of, like, willpower alone, Western countries should start getting involved at this point, because you can see that this isn't going to be anything that goes away anytime soon. And that the Ukrainians really mean they want to be an independent people. You know, it's obvious at this point. I really feel like the West, even if we do have the threat of nuclear annihilation on our hands, we should do the right thing. Because if we let Russia stomp this country, you know, not that they are. I mean, the Ukrainians are winning right now, but hypothetically, if we just sit there and stand by and do nothing to support a country that the Russians are trying to stomp on right now, what are we really? I mean, like, will we ever stand up to anyone? I mean, like, that's kind of my question. Are we only going to stand up for our allies? Do you have to be a part of the club for us to protect you? I mean, like, what? You know, and that's my problem, is that Ukraine wanted to be a part of the club. Russia threatened them, and then we said, well, due to them threatening you and us, we're not going to let you be a part of the club. And then they invaded them anyway, saying they wanted to be a part of the club, and now they're going to pay the price. And it's like, well, yeah, but we weren't even going to allow them in NATO, you know, getting past all the club talk. We weren't even going to allow them in NATO at that point, yet they still invaded. And so it doesn't even make sense at this point. But anyways, I'm going to move on from that, and we're going to cover the things that have been going on in Kherson. We've seen that there was some rocket fire. I almost said that like someone from New York, but there's been some rocket fire near Kherson today, and I have some news that wasn't uploaded to the map because I heard about it like 10 minutes before the stream. And so now that y'all seen that footage, just a few hours ago, there have been reports and news that the Ukrainians have halfway recaptured Kherson. I don't really have a lot of information to confirm that, and I don't really have enough information to talk about it, but it does appear that the Ukrainians may control Kherson again within the next day. And if they do that, that's going to start telling you a lot, because they've broken the 2 sieges around the 2 major cities, and now they're going to recapture the only major city that the Russians have managed to take during this war. And that'll tell you a lot about the strategic situation of the Russian forces inside of Ukraine if Kherson falls. It's going to be automatic that the Russians are on a losing side now within the course of a week and a half. Anyways, we can see that a Ukrainian Su-24, I didn't actually think they had Su-24s, but I pulled it up and they got 16 of them, which is news to me. But we can see that Ukrainian Su-24 today destroyed a column of enemy vehicles. So I'll just show you all the video.
Це наш родной. Летить. Ай-яй-яй-яй, ай-яй-яй-яй. Хорош. Хорош, ебать красавец. Ебать красавец. Давай, родной. Красавец. Хорош. Ебаш, Кацапів, ебаш. Красавец. Ай-яй-яй. Слава Україні, блядь. От так от вас, сука, горіть в аду нахуй. Путін гандон, сука, в
So anyways, the Su-24 destroyed a column and was flying off, and it was a pretty neat little scene. And also, it's really cool to listen to the howl of an Su-24. So anyways, moving on from that, there was a decent amount of developments in Mykolaiv today. First off, I'll show you the remains of an Mi-35 that was shot down in the area of the city today. Here's what's left of it. Not much. Is the answer to that statement, by the way. There's not much left of it. But they did get an intact patch, which is pretty neat. Anyways, moving on from that, there's really not much to talk about. It's just a destroyed helicopter. We can see that there was another destroyed helicopter. I believe that may even be the same one, just a different picture. But there was another picture of a destroyed helicopter in the Mykolaiv Oblast, around the Mykolaiv area. So that was very neat. It's very cool to see that a lot of this stuff is documented, especially aircraft losses, because over here we can see that there was another plane shot down near Mykolaiv. There's a picture of it. It's burning in a field near, the town of Mykolaiv, out in the steppes. And not only that, but they caught the pilot. And I'll show you that video.
Какого? Какой части? 59-882. Откуда сам родом?
Прям родився родом?
Да.
Далі Восток.
Воинская часть где находится? Спасибо.
And so they not only shot down the pilot, they shot down the plane and they captured the pilot. So that was very good overall. We actually got to see the entire story unfold on that one, the plane shot down and the pilot captured. And finally, we can see that there were even more captured pilots near the area of Mykolaiv, which suggests that another aircraft was shot down, but I didn't have any video footage of it. So I'll just show you all this real quick.
Майор Головенский Алексей Сергеевич.
Дата народження.
22.02.90.
Посада.
Посада не
Должность.
Командир звена.
Номер части.
59-882.
Luckily for them, the war is over, so they won't be doing much for the rest of it. And then finally, we have one last thing up here near the area of Bashtanka, which is that we've seen that another helicopter was down today. So this makes the total of helicopters lost rather high. So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's just a picture of the downed helicopter. And now we're going to answer some more questions. I love that questions keep rolling in, and I love answering everyone's questions. So if y'all want to keep asking them, just keep throwing them at me, and I'll try and get to as many as I can. Let's see, we've already answered that one. Search on YouTube for Russian servicemen took control of the military base of the armed forces of Ukraine near Kherson. Just come out today. Okay, I'll take a look at that later. Guerrilla warfare coming. Russia will need lots of hefty cinch sack body bags for their soldiers. Oh yeah, they probably will. Guerrilla warfare is never really a thing that the invading side wins. They may kill more people than they lose at that point, but they never win it because it just becomes like a money pit for the country that gets involved, and nothing really comes out of it, and they still lose in the end. That's always how it goes with insurgencies, except for the one in Chechnya. But nonetheless, you know, that's really how it goes. It won't end well for the Russians if they did manage to somehow win the war and kind of like occupy the country for a while. It wouldn't go well, and it wouldn't go well for the puppet government that they set up because they would start because the civilians would just start attacking that government. It says on paper today that Putin has cancer. Well, let's pull that up. Does Putin have cancer? Putin has cancer, says Royal Navy Admiral. 5 clues. Bloated and unhinged Putin could be seriously ill. Huh. Well, it looks like there's a lot of truth to the statement. There's a lot of people are saying it. But that's interesting if that is so. Maybe we could just wait this war out and wait for him to die off and then get a peace settlement with the Russians since this thing isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Just found this channel. Well, welcome to the channel. I hope you find the news interesting, and if you do, make sure to like and subscribe because it means a lot to the channel. It helps us grow, and it helps the information in the news get out more. And it'll also keep you up to date on the news if you like it. Also, make sure to join the Discord because sometimes people get unsubscribed in the hundreds on this channel. I should be up around like 4.4 thousand subs, but they keep on deleting hundreds of them. YouTube does. So make sure to join the Discord because I always notify everyone on the Discord when the streams are going live. So you'll never miss one that way, and you'll always get the news every single day. Well deserved. You're informative. Thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of the support. I love my viewers. I met a few of them before the stream. They were in a call on my Discord server, and they're all very nice people. I mean, like, you know, one of them said that he disagreed with some of the things I say, but listen, I mean, like, it doesn't really matter. Everyone disagrees about something at some point. I'm just very glad that everyone can get behind supporting Ukraine, and I'm glad that everyone finds the news informative on the stream. Kaliningrad was Königsberg. That's true. My brain still wasn't firing, and I remember that Kaliningrad was in East Prussia, but I forgot what it was called beforehand. Why is any being deleted? That's not cool. I don't know what that's about. If you stop saying so much, your stream should be cut in half. I mean, like, I'm trying to come up with this stuff on the fly, so I kind of say a little bit. Sorry about that if that's bothering you. You're doing great. Thank you. I did it again, eh? I doubt they would really be able to accurately count that right now anyways. Probably so. I saw the video of the huge number of Russians workers protesting government. I haven't seen that actually, and if you could send me a video of that, if you could join the Discord, I'd be very appreciative. Living in Stockholm, Sweden as an American, I do get to hear about Russians invading Swedish airspace. Also, now that you've mentioned me saying now I'm actually noticing that I am saying that a lot. So I'm sorry about that. I'm really tired. So, you know, things don't really come to me as fast as they did before. I've been up for nearly a week and a half at this point, covering this news, doing studying for a law school exam, working on college work as a full-time student. So I only get about 4 hours of sleep a night. And so while I started off these streams not saying a lot, probably, I'm saying it a lot now because I'm just really tired. So I'm sorry that's bothering you, but please do understand where I'm coming from. I've been doing this for a week and a half, and I'm very exhausted. I bet most people here are drinking, so... doing great, Enforcers. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from one live... Oh, dang it. There went the whole chat. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I try my best to deliver the best information. I am sorry if I'm saying a lot. Now that's come to my attention, and now I'm thinking about it a lot. So I'm sorry about that. If you keep chat spamming, it's very likely he will. I don't know what that's about. You need your own TV channel. Great stuff. Wow, thank you. That's like the best comment I've gotten so far. So thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of that. Hello from Denver. Rocky Mountain High. Oh, well, I've been to Denver. It's an interesting place. I really liked Fort Collins, honestly, better than Denver. I'm sorry. I mean, like, Fort Collins was like Denver 2.0. But do you think that people who botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan should get us involved in a war against a nuclear superpower? Well, everyone botches everything at some point. Winston Churchill botched the naval invasion at Gallipoli in World War One. Yet he went on to be one of the greatest statesmen in World War Two. So, while people do make failures, I don't want to act like since they made one failure, they're damned to eternity to fail. Well, I'm not going to get into American politics a lot because for some reason the military has been getting involved in politics a lot lately, which I feel like is entirely wrong, and they shouldn't be getting involved in any way or any form whatsoever. That's not the role of the military. So I'm going to not say anything about that because that would be delving into party politics, nearly talking about the upper end structure of the military these days. He's dying from cancer. That makes him that more dangerous. And it makes him that much deader quicker, if you see what I'm saying. So hopefully he'll die soon. Putin's losing experienced pilots, equipment, and morale. The normally cautious strongman gambler miscalculated in the Ukrainian thought he'd be smarter. That's pretty true. So, I could see what you're saying there. Let's see what else we got. Why not? Google knows everything. That's very true. This is a fantastic channel. Thank you, streamer. No problem at all. I appreciate trying to bring out the news, and I love that everyone likes the news I'm delivering, because when I started the stream, I was thinking, I'm going to do what CNN and Fox does better, and I also did this because I have a friend in Ukraine, and I was hoping that maybe he'd watch him, and I think he may be watching him. I don't know. I mean, like, I haven't really been told that from him, but I hope he's getting some valuable information out of this that maybe he's not even getting in Ukraine, but I really just started this to see how much better I could do at reporting this info than anyone else. And so far, I've gotten a lot of support, so I guess I'm doing better. I don't know. Read that Putin is not retrieving the bodies of dead Russian soldiers. What is being done with the bodies? I don't know. That's a really good point. I really don't know what they'll do with the bodies. Maybe they'll just start interring them in mass graves after the war is over, or they're just left there to rot. I don't know. Where will they bury Putin, or will they just burn him? Well, the honest truth is he'll get probably buried behind the Lenin Mausoleum. That's usually where most important statesmen of the Russian Federation and the Soviet Union got buried. So maybe he'd be buried behind the Lenin Mausoleum. I don't know. Let's see. Valery Solovey, who served as the head of Public Relations Department Moscow Staff Institute of the Internal Relations, said Putin is suffering from cancer along with Parkinson's disease. Okay, now I had a friend who had Parkinson's disease, and I don't really know if that's true, because my friend had a severe form of Parkinson's before he passed, and I mean, like, he could hardly hold anything, so I don't know. The man shot in the leg is in Novopskov. Let's pull that up. Where's that? Oh, I spelled it wrong. Sorry, y'all. Novopskov. Let's see what that said in the chat again. Let me make sure I'm spelling that right. Novopskov. Okay. Novopskov. And Luhansk Oblast. Oh, that's up there. Oh, that's weird. I'll have to adjust the map if that's true. If you could join the Discord and provide me a link for that, I would love that. So that way I could update the map up there to account that the Russians have apparently made it in there somewhere. Anyways, moving on. Is the Wagner Group still active in Ukraine? I believe the Wagner Group is the group of guys. I don't really know much about them because I focus on like main frontline developments and not like special groups, although every once in a while I do love mentioning that the VDV or the Spetsnaz got wiped out in another area. I believe y'all were talking about the group that was sent to kill Zelensky, and I believe that they said days ago that they've been entirely wiped out, if that's the group y'all are talking about. So yes, I believe that they've been wiped out. How likely is that Putin will unleash nukes on USA? Likely or not? I can't really say either way at this point. It's kind of like half and half. It seems like he's starting to lean more and more towards he's just trying to instigate a war. Like, today he said economic sanctions are pretty much war. And, that's war talk right there. So I don't know. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I really can't say either way. Mobile cremation machine burning up Russian soldiers' bodies. That's true. I've seen that. Maybe that's what's happening. But then again, families will have to have closure because their sons will never come back to them and they'll ask the Russian government what's happened to him, and maybe they'll pull a Kursk on him for a bit and just say, we don't know, nothing's happened to him, they're fine. And then, you know, like years later come out and tell them that they're all dead. And that's what they did with the Kursk, I think. But who knows? You know, who really knows? USA vets are going over there to fight with Ukraine. I've heard that a lot, and I'm very glad they are. I don't know how many there are doing that. And oh yikes, that's kind of like party politics stuff. I'm not really I don't really cover stuff about either president. I really just talk about the current administration and what they do, if I ever talk about America at all in this stream. Because, you know, I mean, I'm going to say this because some of my viewers may be new. There will be a time, because this is a current events channel, where I do talk about American politics, but I don't want American politics to detract from the war in Ukraine, if you see what I'm saying. So, you know, I don't really want to talk about that, because then the stream will become more about American politics, with Ukraine as like a soap box to talk about American politics on, more so than the Ukraine politics, and then America is the sideshow, if you see what I'm saying. So I don't really try and mention it a lot in here. Putin would have to nuke all of USA and Europe, while we would all be firing at Russia. Kind of losing proposition for him. Yeah, it is. 16,000 foreign fighters counted, 450 dead. So you're saying that 450 of those people have already died? 190,000 Russians claim to be attacking. Yes, that's something, I'm not really sure if that number's correct anymore, because they said 90% of the armed force, the Russian ground forces are involved in this invasion at this point. And if you type in Russian ground forces on the internet, you can see that there's only 280,000 of them in the active duty. And so going off of that, if we were to divide 190,000 by 280,000, that means that only 68% of the Russian army is involved in this. But the Department of Defense has looked at satellite footage, and they have concluded that 90% of Russia's ground forces are involved in this current invasion right now. And that would be highly accurate, because if they only had 190,000, they'd hardly even have a 1-to-1 ratio with the Ukrainian defenders versus them. And usually when you're in an offensive, you want to have a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 advantage over whatever you're attacking. So if they only have like a 1-to-1 ratio with the Ukrainians, they're obviously going to try and pump those numbers way up. And so I believe that it is probably accurate that around 90% of the Russian ground forces are involved in this war at the moment. But, you know, that may be true. That's based off of all the information I've gotten. Thank you. You're welcome. If you're talking about talking about the stream. No, don't wait. Russians have to get their pride back. Rise up. It's your time. You're accountable. Okay. Liked and subscribed, and Discord too. Thank you, Enforcer. You're so welcome. I love doing streams. I'm thankful that you support them. I'm so tired right now, y'all. I'm so sorry. My wife is a doctor from Belarus. She told me 2 months ago Putin has colon cancer. That's interesting. A lot of people are confirming that he has cancer of some kind. And I believe that it's been kind of known that he had cancer, and last year he went into surgery for it. But no one really knows what happened to it. Maybe it's an aggressive form of cancer, and they did surgery on it, and it did not fix the cancer issue. And now he's actually starting to have like terminal cancer, and he's dying from it. So yeah, maybe that's what's happening. There's another one of those comments. Yeah, I think at this point everyone's kind of agreeing about that. New subscriber, good job. Thank you very much. Did you saw Russian soldiers trapped in an elevator while trying to reach roof? I did, and I'm actually going to show you that picture. Here it is. Right there, that's the picture. They're VDV too, because they got that same little stripe camouflage thing that we've seen on the other people who are confirmed VDV troops. And I love how the guy who took this picture took it when they all looked at the camera, like all of them, most of them did. That's pretty funny. But yeah, I've seen that picture. So moving back on to the questions, we're going to answer a few more. Basically, the elites are done with Putin like Trump, and they baited him into a bear trap. I'm sorry, man, but I don't really believe there's just a group of elites that control the whole world, because if they did, then why did the Soviet Union exist? And why have so many countries existed that are complete rivals to the other side? You know, I don't really understand that. You know, I don't understand where everyone's always coming up with a secret group of people who are like pulling the strings like it's a puppet show. I just don't really believe in that stuff. The world's a very straightforward and simple place, and I believe that people try and find sense in what's going on and some of this nonsensical stuff like this war that's happening, and they try and find sense in it by overcomplicating how the world works, but I can promise you it's a very simple thing. I've been close to the top. I actually knew Jeff Sessions at a time, and I can tell y'all that the top actually works pretty simple. It's almost exactly what you see. It's very basic. Let's see. Has Ukraine won yet? Western media keeps telling me Ukraine is winning. They're winning. I mean, like, you know, they're not pushing into Russia, and there will never be a time when they actually like take Moscow or anything kind of win the war, but they are pushing the Russians back. They've broken the siege around Kharkiv, they've broken the west side encirclement of Kiev, and they are halfway taking Kherson at the moment from what I read about an hour or two ago. So I mean, like, they're winning in a lot of areas, you know, and the Western media is pretty true in saying that. You know, and really there's no reason for the Western media to lie, because they really have nothing vested in this war. Like, if Ukraine loses this war, the West really doesn't lose much. And if they win this war, the West doesn't really lose much or gain much from that either. It's either they cease to exist or they continue existing. And either way, the West doesn't really have a lot to do with that, if you know what I'm saying. So, you know, they really don't have a reason to lie about Western media, at least doesn't. Let's see. Exit strategy, like the Chancellor of Germany from 1939 escaping to South America. I don't think he escaped to South America. They cremated his body so that way they wouldn't have like Nazis wouldn't have a grave to go to after the war. I think that's why they did that. Do you know why Putin has had multiple plastic surgeries done on his face? I haven't heard about that, and if he's having plastic surgery done, that's kind of vain. So I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and then I'm going to end the stream because I believe it's over 2 hours long at this point. So, will Chechens, Tartars, Belarusians, and Ukrainian and Russian speakers on both sides, it's become the focal point of a full ex-Eastern Bloc Slavic civil war, IMO. I don't really know what that question is, because it's kind of phrased in a way I'm not really understanding right now. But maybe? You know, my answer to anything I really can't understand is maybe, if I can't understand it. How likely is it that Putin will unleash nukes on you? Oh, you've already asked that. You from Texas by any chance? Oh, do I sound southern like that? No, I'm from the southeast. It's more east from Texas, but it's in the southeast. I can guarantee you that. But I don't like to say exactly where I'm from because there's bots and stuff, and you know, I don't really want anyone knowing exactly who I am or where I'm from. Just know that I'm the enforcer and I'm from the southeast. So, one more question. Well, China will survive. Oh, that's not really a question. Google is pure propaganda. Nah, not really. Slava Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Yes, I can agree with that. Great analysis on your channel. Great work, bud. Thank you very much. Will Odessa be attacked by sea? Yes, that's what I said, that their first day or secondary objective is that they would attack Odessa by the sea, and it looks like from Lukashenko's plans that he published, which is on the week 1 map. By the way, join the Discord and go to the useful links section to see the day 7 map if you want to see all the markers on that map. But he actually had a battle plan map, and it looked like there was a Russian naval invasion planned around Odessa, and the Russian forces would kind of like bypass Mykolaiv and begin to encircle this whole entire like salient right here. But with that, I believe that's the last question I'm going to answer. I thank y'all all so much for coming tonight. I really loved answering all of your questions. I hope y'all found the stream informative. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like the news and you'd like to keep up to date and be notified when this news is live. It comes live. It goes on, like this news comes on every night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so if you liked it, make sure to do that. And make sure to show up for tomorrow's stream. And if you really liked it, make sure to join the Discord, because I try and talk to my viewers as much as I can. I'm really busy, so I can't do a lot of talking to viewers, but I try and talk as much as I can, and I appreciate all of y'all who showed your support. So I thank y'all all so much, and I hope y'all have a great night, and I'll see y'all at 10 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Thank you so much.